Welcome to our first Q&A session, everybody. Nice to see you all.
Everyone.
Hi, guys.
One.
All right, so we'll just wait for more people to come in. In the meantime, we have set up a poll for you guys to try. Let me see. So I'm just gonna go ahead and launch this. See whether you guys can see a poll. Oh, yeah. So we have got a poll for you guys to find out where you guys actually are in your game development stage. Like, are you still brainstorming for ideas? I think someone clicked that already. Are you like, be past that? Are you like now creating a scene? Are you thinking of characters that's a bit more advanced already? Yeah, I'd just love to know where you guys are at. Oh, Kim, I see you've got your hand raised. Oh yes, so just to let everyone know, if you raise your hand, we'll give you access to the mic, and then you can unmute yourself and then start verbalizing and start talking. Yeah. So Kim, I see you've got your hand raised. You can turn on the mic now, actually, if you want, and we can find out what you want to say. Or did you like accidentally press raise hand? If you did, that's fine too.
Could be. Yeah, if not, feel free to write it on chat. We'll monitor chat as well, or submit a question. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so just to let everyone know, this session will be recorded as well. So if you guys like miss something or you want to go back to it, feel free. We'll have it uploaded onto the participants guide. So yeah, it's about 4 minutes in. I will get the ball rolling actually. So I've got a couple of questions on my end. I've got questions from some of the teams that came in on Discord. Some of them are too shy to speak it on the resources chat. But I'm happy to speak, ask on their behalf, right? So, I think the first question I have here is there a big difference between 2D and 3D game development on Unity? And what other considerations should I have? Should I have for each? I'll let Stefan, Mondo, and John take this question.
I could start, and then maybe Mondo, you can hop in as well. But I think that for 2D and 3D, they're both going to be very different approaches. Because our avatars are 3D, there's going to be a lot more workaround that you're going to have to do in order to get that to work. So yeah, so I think there is a 2D platformer tutorial up on the resources page. And we do have the example project up there for that, but basically those are 2D sprites with like 3D colliders on them. So it's kind of half 2D, half 3D. So there's things like that you have to consider when using 2D. And if you're going to be utilizing our ZEPETO avatar, then because that is 3D, you can't make it fully 3D. So unless you just go completely 2D, don't even worry about the avatar at all. Then in that case, you can just go a full 2D route with 2D colliders and everything like that. So whether you do 2D or whether you do 3D, they're going to be two completely different approaches and will require independent study whichever direction you go. So that's a very big decision that you have to make before you start the game. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that yes, if you're gonna do 2D, there's gonna be more you're gonna have to do. But yeah, because the avatars are 3D and it's kind of made for like 3D games, but you can definitely do 2D. It's just gonna take a little more finagling of the, like the assets to lock the camera to make things work a certain way. But definitely doable. Definitely doable.
All right. I think to kind of like add on to my own impressions to like lean into that question, I think what the guy's trying to ask is like, is it gonna be like more complex to make a 3D game? And like, will he be disadvantaged if he like maybe, for example, goes with a 2D game because it's gonna be maybe technically easier to do a 2D game, but will he like lose out to people doing 3D games, for example? Is that always the case? Like that a 3D game is always better than a 2D game?
So I personally think that I mean, of course, there are caveats. If you're working with the ZEPETO avatar, then it's going to be more challenging. You might be a little bit disadvantaged to get that to work. But if you do go 2D and you go completely 2D route, maybe not utilize the ZEPETO avatars, there could be a lot more things that you can do in terms of like a performance budget, or just the things that you can do. Probably you can do a lot more. Whereas maybe if you're using 2D, 3D assets, you might be limited a little bit in terms of your kind of tech budget in terms of what you can accomplish. So I think there's benefits to both. I think if maybe you're starting in ZEPETO, I would probably recommend more 3D, going more 3D just to experiment with the avatar. That is what the benefit of our platform is. So I probably would recommend 3D if you can. But I mean, if you have a really good idea and you want to push for 2D, I'd say go for it. But yeah.
Right, awesome. Okay, I'll move on to my next question. So we have a question asking, it's gonna be super like broad, but like, what are the most common mistakes that beginners make when they start out doing game development? And is there any way like to avoid them? Any tips? What are the most, what are the common mistakes? Like maybe you guys could draw from your own personal experience, like what are the most common mistakes you guys always made when you're starting to create a game? Well,
I can kind of start off. I think one thing that is easy to fall into is over scoping. So trying to do too much, because you got to remember it may seem like a lot of time. It's not a lot of time. Like the end of the game jam will creep up on you super fast. So it's very important to scope, well. So don't try to make an MMO, obviously. Um, but yeah, just really think about what can you actually do in that time. And I think the other thing that you really want to go after is don't over plan. Like don't spend a week planning. Like really, if you have an idea, try to get something down and into at the very least into Unity, and you can hit play and you can actually move your character around, even to build it as soon as possible. Like even if it's just a box and your character is moving around and you're just gray boxing, like let's say you're making a world about cities. Like if you don't need to wait for the final art assets, put a bunch of giant boxes down, try to get something up and running as soon as possible is what I would say. Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think definitely scoping is going to be probably something that people struggle with a lot. I think trying to get to a functional core loop as soon as possible, and this means that like all of the like what we call a vertical slice. Like if you imagine a sandwich, then you have all of the pieces of the puzzle in, and you can just kind of make the sandwich longer, right? But then all of the pieces required that's part of your game should be implemented, I think, as soon as possible, so that you can at least verify, okay, this is what's fun about my game, this is what's fun about my world, and then like start adding more to that. But I think figuring out what your MVP, your minimum viable product is for this world gem, and then getting to that as soon as possible so that you can start going into the polishing step. Like this is an idea that works. Going into the polishing step after that. Yeah. So then, I mean, there's definitely going to be other things such as like maybe performance things that maybe you realize that, oh, I put way too much in here, and like you didn't realize what impacts certain elements of your world would have on performance. So you wouldn't know that until you start testing it. And if you don't have if you don't have your world ready to test yet, and then you spend most of your time trying to get something really difficult to work, maybe it's a good idea to maybe drop it and go for something simpler. So I think be super mindful of your time and budget as you develop.
I just want to piggyback on one more thing. Me and John actually worked along with Carter, another person on our team. on a prototype game. And one thing that a mistake you can make is not testing often enough. When we were making this prototype, we basically tested at least every day. And everything we added, we always made sure that it never broke the game. Like every stage of the game, it's always playable. So you can always play the game, and you're just constantly testing. So just be aware of not, be careful of leaving the game in a like never testing the game for like even a few days, and then you find out it's broken or something. So yeah, test often is the other thing.
Cool, testing often. I will actually go back on that. I'll go to that testing. I'll talk more about testing later on. But I actually have a question from Kim right now on the Q&A. He typed so his question is there any judging criteria? It was provided at the last vote jam, but not this time. Okay, sorry. Actually, maybe that's a good time to just refresh the judging criteria, I guess. It's always good to like keep that in mind as you're creating your game, your world. So, well, Kim, so number one, right, we have gameplay mechanics, right? Is your world fun to play? I think John and Mondo, just feel free to like chime in as well. Like, so in my opinion, I think this is probably the number one like judging criteria. Like, is your world fun to play, right? Are the mechanics well thought out? Like, is there a difficulty scale? Like, does it get harder as the levels progress? To me, this is what makes a world fun. But there's also other ways that a world can be fun, right? Compelling story hook. Maybe you're good at writing like a compelling narrative. Maybe at the end, like it's an adventure, kind of adventure style kind of thing where like, you progress to or an escape room kind of thing. I'm just throwing out ideas here, but all these can have different like end goals of fun, right? But that's where your creativity comes in on which kind of angle you're going to go for, right? So number one would be gameplay mechanics. Is the world fun to play? The next one would be creativity and originality. How fresh and creative is your world? I think a good way to like think about this is look at all the current worlds that's currently on ZEP and see what hasn't really been done before. Like, or like what you've seen and like what you think, I could do this better. That's a good start, right? That's a good way to make sure that your world is going to be like stands out from the rest. Number three, design and aesthetics. How does the world look and feel? This one is, I feel like we've got a lot of artists on our participants actually in our cohort this time. So I think this is a good time, it's a place for them to like really showcase their skills. I think this one doesn't bear any further explanation. Like, how does your world look? Like, how well do you use the assets? You know, if you could make your own assets, that's also a plus. But that's really advanced, right? How does it look? How does all the like different parts of your assets like blend together and make a cohesive look? That all adds to design and aesthetics, right? So that's the third criteria. The fourth criteria is user experience. How user friendly is the world? This is basically UI UX, right? It's how easy to understand are your menus. How about your instructions? Like if I move like my player there, does my player actually go there? User experience, how user friendly is the world? All right. Then we also have adherence to theme. So Kim, I'm not sure if you managed to catch the opening ceremony, and especially actually our theme reveal. So the whole like World Jam is going to be based around the theme of dreams and nightmares. And so this judging criteria, adherence to theme, is how well you kind of utilize that theme of dreams and nightmares. It can be like dream and nightmare, it can be dream or nightmare. We're gonna leave it entirely up to you. Surprise us, right? And then lastly, implementation of multiplayer. So does your world have a multiplayer component and does it work well? So we're kind of like really we at the ZEP team like really love like multiplayer worlds because it's always more fun with more people, right? So if your world has a multiplayer component, that's a really like strong bonus for you if for your submission. So that's a whole other kind of thing where you have to think like, well, how does your mechanics interact with multiple people? If multiple players come on board, like how do you want them to engage with each other? It's a lot of considerations to think about. But yeah, so just to summarize, our judging criteria is number one, gameplay mechanics. Number two, creativity and originality. Number three, design and aesthetics. Number 4, user experience. Number 5, adherence to theme. And number 6, implementation of multiplayer. So yeah, hope that's clear, Kim. Right. Okay, wait. Suddenly the chat's kind of blowing up a little bit. Okay. So Lee, you asked this. I'm gonna move on to the next question. Lee asked on the Q&A, I don't know if I can ask this in this session, but I want to ask something strange. No, there's no strange questions here. Sometimes 10 errors occur in index.ts and then disappear. If I turn off my laptop and turn it on again, the errors disappear. So I don't know if John, Mondo, you guys can help.
So I do see your Discord post that maybe just because the image type, when I wrote the code, I didn't, it's kind of more pseudocode that I kind of wrote to you. The image type actually should be, if we're setting the image active, it should be GameObject.setActive. So it should be, let me just really quickly type this. So my this dot my image dot game object dot set active true. Yeah, so then just have to just make sure that you have dot game object inside of that after the image name, and then that should work to get rid of, at the very least, the issues, the errors that are showing up around the set active. Yeah, so that should just be part of the game object class, not part of the image class.
All right. Okay, cool. Hope that answered your question, Lee. Great. Yeah, so I mentioned I wanted to go back onto the what John and Mondo were talking about with regards to, actually, so John mentioned gameplay loop, and Mondo mentioned testing. So actually I think a lot of people who start out at world development, they're wondering, like, when do you start really like testing out your world? Like, is there a way to make sure it doesn't break? Like, when do you do it every single time you enter like a new asset, or every time you enter like a new mechanic, a new like scripting thing? Like, when do you test it? Or is it like all the time? Like, yeah, or do you dedicate like a certain like time frame to like test everything?
I mean, as far as, yeah, I think like basically anytime you add anything, like you test it, right? Because if you add a bunch of stuff and then you don't test it for a while and then something breaks, then you're like, well, what broke it, right? Now you got to go back. So I mean, it's not very hard to, at the very least, like test in Unity, right? Hit play, do something, hit play, make sure it works, do something, hit play. Literally, I think I hit play like I can't even count. It's like a lot of times. And then, after you have like a big thing, and then try making a QR code build, play it on your phone, see if it works, stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, test often. I think it's just like a part of development. It's not really you plan for testing. It's like you just constantly are just testing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Anytime you're adding any kind of feature in, at the very least from the editor, you should be testing like right away to make sure it works before you add too many things. So testing often, I think, is probably better. Just because of the downtime of making a QR code, maybe I wouldn't test
Yeah.
quite as often on the device, but I definitely would. Any bigger feature, once you have a kind of like a full set of features, something that you want to make sure that everything's cohesively working together, that's when I would make a QR code build. So I think probably at least once or twice a day with the QR code, just to test to make sure everything's functional. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So always hit that play button. Yeah. Okay. Q&A has got a lot. Okay, interesting. I'm going down from the top. All right. Anonymous attendee. I'm just a little curious why some developer resources are not publicly shared. They're really good and will definitely encourage more developers to work on ZEPETO. John? Mondo?
So for developer resources that are not publicly shared, so I'm not sure if you mean that there are some like empty slots in the resources page. Those are just because those are videos that we're actually actively working on to make for you guys. So it's not like about privacy. It's more about like we're trying to make those videos for you guys. So if there's a particular guide that maybe is super important to you guys, I know that there has been some comments about the using the templates and how to create those templates, how to download and utilize those templates. So that's a guide that we're going to be working and try to prioritize first and foremost. But yeah, I mean there isn't really any developer resources that we want to keep private or anything like that. Yeah, if it's not available, it probably just means that we're working on it. So just bring that to our attention and we'll help you out.
Right,
Right.
and adding to John's comment, if you're asking about the resources Notion page that we made, I know that page right now is not public and it's only shared with the world and participants. But we are in the process of organizing, finding, and doing some last hands on the beta version of the resources page. So we're working on it and hopefully we'll make it public and official by early next year. So yeah, this won't be just kept between us and for the World Gem participants, it will be public shortly.
Right. Awesome. The next question, does Unity's revamped fee structure affect the cost to develop with ZEPETO? Will there be any plan to support ZEPETO's development on a new game engine or editor in the future? Ooh, big questions.
So that's actually a good question. So I think there was a big scare of Unity and their pricing model and things like that recently that I think probably hit a lot of developers pretty hard. We personally will not be affected by that. So I mean, there's no plans to kind of change our direction in terms of the Unity, utilizing Unity as an engine. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing that you guys are gonna have to worry about too much. So yeah, I mean, there's no plans to change to a new engine at the moment. So
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, actually, I think Unity actually backpedaled on a bit of that policy. So it's gonna be like available on the next version of Unity only, and it's only applicable if like the game is the world of game has crossed like 2 thresholds in terms of like revenue. But that's well, let Unity decide what they want to do with that. Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. The next question. Is there an FAQ page to resolve OS specific um OS meaning Mac OS or Linux issues? Is there a FAQ page to resolve OS specific issues? Anonymous attendee managed to find a workaround for some issues, but it'll be nice to have a consolidated FAQ page for reference.
So actually, we do have a FAQ page on our webpage that we do want to highlight for you here. Let me actually share that link with you. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a hard time finding that link at the moment. Here we go. So underneath the help section of the World SDK guide, so there's a development FAQ there. Most of the issues that you maybe find are going to be underneath that section. So this here. So I mean, this is for an FAQ for the singleton reference, but we don't really have OS specific, troubleshooting steps that we have at the moment. But I think we do try to kind of consider both platforms for a lot of these issues. But yeah, if there's something that is OS specific that you're struggling with, maybe mention that when you're asking the question in our help page. And I think that would help us a lot, that this is something that you're experiencing maybe is that you suspect is more specific to the Mac OS platform. And then that would help us troubleshoot that issue a lot more too. So
Okay, cool. All right, the last question on the Q&A. So this is my fault, actually. I think I caused a lot of confusion when I used ZEP and ZEPETO. So the question is ZEP and ZEPETO sibling companies? No, ZEPETO is the one company, and ZEP is like another service. That's yeah.
Right.
So
So, clarify this a little bit. So ZEPETO is actually one of the products under NeighborZ, and ZEP is another product that's under NeighborZ. So yes, we're like sibling, I guess, products instead of companies, but we are under the same company.
awesome. All right. Okay, cool. That was the Q&A. I mean, that's the questions that we've just received. So I think I wanted to go back to John's when you mentioned gameplay loop. Um, can you maybe explain like the concept of a gameplay loop to some who are like really, really new to like world game development? Maybe they don't really understand what a loop, what do you mean by that? Like, does it mean like when you shoot something, you get a point? Is that considered a loop? What's a loop? Yeah.
Sure, sure. So gameplay loop just refers to like a full cycle of gameplay. So it means that there is like when I start the game, what should I expect to see? Maybe some sort of menu. Then I do something and then head into the game. Then there's some sort of gameplay that happens, which then takes me to the end of the game where I can restart the game. That is basically the full loop. Is what we're talking about. So it's just a completed cycle of gameplay from a user experience perspective. So I think it's just talking about completion in that sense, a completion of a full gameplay cycle, getting that in, I think, as soon as possible, I think is important. Because like really, I think if we have until maybe just over a month to work on this project, I'd say, I don't know, like maybe a week and a half, maximum 2 weeks you'd spend making sure that the core loop is all in there. Then maybe you'd spend maybe another week or two with polishing, and then that final week you do like kind of play testing. So yeah, it's not that much time. So I think as soon as that you can get that full loop in, I think the better.
All right. Okay. Cool. Thanks, John. Um, okay, that's the questions on my end. Looks like we have also no more questions on the Q&A. Yeah, so I will leave the room open for maybe about 5 more minutes. In the meantime, I guess I want to ask John Mondul, do you have any advice for people who are just starting out? Like, so it seems based on the poll where they at. I saw the poll. I think most of them were at let's see, creating a scene and brainstorming for ideas. So brainstorming for ideas, I think a lot of things we covered, like talking about gameplay loops. I went through the judging criteria. I think hopefully we kind of like sparked some of your imagination a bit, some of your creativity. So that's that part. Take as much time as you need for brainstorming, because I think like it's quite important, but also don't take too much time, right? Like Mondu said, just start building out something that you have. Like don't overscope it. Don't When you brainstorm, make sure you don't like make it MMO, for example, right? Make something that you've got, more that's kind of like catered to your current skill level and your team skill level. That's, I think, an advice I can give for you guys. Um, Most of you guys are actually at creating a scene right now. At this point, like I don't know, John, Mondo, do you have any advice like at this stage, like at the scene creating stage? What what do you think that participants need to look out for? Like what are the most, or for example, the most important tools in the Unity editor that they could utilize to make sure that their scene is solid, like it doesn't break, like it doesn't, do anything weird.
Something that might come in handy is Pro Builder. So it's a very simple tool for those of you that don't have maybe as much 3D experience. It would make like creating really simple prototype models super easy. So if you're blocking out like your level, Pro Builder is going to be a very kind of useful tool for you to like quickly block out different ideas, how this area will look like and how that area will look like, and you can create different material, different geometry very like easily. So like before you're ready to maybe implement your full art, like I mentioned, like a quick prototype and like functional loop, I think is very important, like really early. So that when you're creating your scene, don't drop like, all of your high quality assets in there right from the beginning and like try to create the final product. Get something out really quick, block it out, because things are going to change as you're developing. Like you're gonna not like this part and you're gonna start moving that over. But if you spend so much time making everything look super pretty at the beginning, you're gonna waste a lot of time because that's gonna change anyway in the future. So I think Pro Builder is a good way to kind of quickly get assets out there. Of course, the asset store is going to be another good tool for you if you want to quickly find, assets that that maybe might be useful, like sound assets, things like that. Yeah, so I think those are maybe the tools that I would look into first.
Yeah, I would totally agree about just like what John was saying about blocking things out. If you use Pro Builder, or even if you use like primitives, like block that scene out with like the simplest tools you can. Don't try to like, spend like a week on some kind of art asset to put into your game. Block it out with either Pro Builder or just simple shapes, right? And the other thing you can do that's really quick, I find that even though like you shouldn't concentrate too much on the way it looks in the beginning, because you're really trying to get like John is saying, like the massing down, like the very beginnings, right? I think it is kind of helpful to make it look at least pretty enough for that when you look at it, it excites you, and also excites your teammates if you're working with team. And for that, I think like if you just go into environment settings, like add fog, add some lighting, make sure like your shapes like have the right color so that there's like a distinction between the background and the foreground, things like that, like very simple things. We actually have like a video that talks about just like beautifying your scene. It's in the quick start guide. It's one of the videos. You can check it out. But you can really quickly just make it look pretty enough so that you like looking at it, so it will kind of motivate you to keep going, is what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful advice, guys. All right. Okay, so I think we are about at nearing the end of this first Q&A session. Understandably, there's not going to be many because most people have also just started out. But we're probably going to get a bit more. So for the next Q&A session, I guess do continue to post your questions on the Discord chat, on the resources channel especially. So John and Mondo are there all the time. We'll be there to just answer your questions whenever we can. Yeah, don't feel shy. I know like some of them you guys mentioned like you feel a bit strange asking questions, but no, there's no questions we find strange. Like it's questions you need, so we're very happy to answer those. Yeah, all right, guys. With that, I will call this first Q&A session to a close. All right. All the best for your rest of your week. Happy building your world. Cheers, guys.
Thanks everyone for joining our first Q&A session.
Thanks, guys. See you guys in Discord. Yeah, please don't be shy. Ask us questions on Discord. We're here to help all of us.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye, everyone.